Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Really pleased to see all of you. So a special welcome to the students from UITM, Nottingham and Monash, as well as all the other students are here. We're really happy to have you guys here. Aswara? What? An extra welcome to the Aswara student who made it as well. Welcome to Remember When, 1984 Here and Now. This is the second in a series of conversations centered on seminal Malaysian productions. My name is Rowland, and with my co-moderator, Fasyali Fadzly, we're opening a conversation about a groundbreaking production in Malaysian theatre history, 1984 Here and Now. Today with us is the playwright, Kee Thuan Chye.
Thank you.
And two actors from the production, Fatimah Bakar, who needs no introduction, obviously. Fatimah played one of the central protagonists, Yone, and Big Brother himself, Mano Maniam. So this project is part of Five Arts Centre's archive history project, which is called My Malaysian Art Memory Project. And the center kind of grounding for this project is actually a website that we've created. What we want to do today is to record a conversation. It's an hour and a half that we, Fasyali and I, will actually kind of moderate a conversation with our three guests. After that, we'll actually open for questions from members of the audience. Just a bit of housekeeping. We will be, actually this thing is now being screened, or being streamed, what's the word, streamed? Streamed.
Live streaming, yeah.
So yeah, all the millennials will tell you, on Facebook Live. And we will also, as I've said, be recording it. So if you do, when you have your questions, please do speak into the mics that will be handed around, because we would like to have all your questions also part of the recording. You may take photos, but no flash, please. And you may post it on all your social media platforms. So we'll very quickly, because we want to save time, I am assuming that a lot of you would know already about the production, but very briefly, 1984 Here and Now was staged at the Universiti Malaya in 1985. It's loosely based on George Orwell's 1984, the novel. And what the play does is it transposes Orwell's dystopian world into an unnamed country where society is divided into party members and proles. And it's a division that is based almost exclusively on race. There are two main protagonists, Wira, who's a journalist, and comes from the party, he comes from the same racial or ethnic group as the party members, the majority, which is also politically dominant, who falls in love with Yone, a young activist who comes from the minority group. Both of them join the resistance, but they're eventually captured and they're tortured. The departure in the play is that in the production that was staged over 5 days in 1985, the playwright gave the power to the audience members to decide how the play would end and what the fate of these two protagonists would be. We'll go into that a little bit more as we go along. But I think that while this is a project about history, history is ever and always will be about the present as well. So some of the themes that the play, deals with will have a lot of echoes with our society today in Malaysia, but also beyond Malaysia's borders. Just the ideas of political divisions being created through race or through religion, for example. The ideas of corruption, the ideas of an elite, small minority that governs a large majority. So, those are the things that I think just keep in the back of your mind as we start the conversation today. And we'll open with a question from Fasyali. I want to also say that we would really like this to be as bilingual or multilingual as everyone feels comfortable with it. So, I'll be speaking mostly in English, but everyone is allowed and welcomed and deeply encouraged to speak in whatever language you feel comfortable with.
Including Hokkien.
Including Hokkien, which of course I'll translate.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So my name is Fasyali. Boleh kita ke soalan seterusnya. Soalan untuk Kee Thuan Chye. Bilakah anda mula membaca novel 1984 dan bagaimana idea untuk mengadaptasikan daripada novel ke bentuk pentas.
Well, in the beginning of the 80s, there was a buzz about 1984, the novel by Orwell, because it was like some people attached to it a kind of prophetic vision about what was going to happen in 1984, authoritarianism peaking and that kind of thing. So I decided to look at a book, and I saw that it was very relevant to the Malaysian context, because at that time, authoritarianism was really taking root in Malaysia. And I saw it as an opportunity to write a play, adapt a play, write a play out of it, adapt from Orwell's novel. But what really got me going was the fact that you couldn't discuss the issues of the day in those days in the mainstream newspapers. We didn't have an alternative media then, you see. And so it was very frustrating. People couldn't even write letters to the editor to express their views on a particular issue of the day because it would never see print. It was that bad in those days. So I felt then that the only way to do it was to write a play. And I saw the parallels. In 1984, the novel, it's a clash between the elite, the party members, and the pros, who are supposed to be the working class, the general populace. And I decided that it would be good to adapt that to our own milieu and make it into a conflict of race, because at that time, it was the height of the implementation of the new economic policy, which I saw as institutionalized racial discrimination. And then, of course, the idea of Big Brother. If you remember, in the 80s, the Prime Minister was Mahathir Mohamad. He started, he came in and he became increasingly authoritarian. So I saw the play as a medium to criticize Mahathir in a metaphorical way. And that's how I decided to write it.
Ya, and saya juga ingin menyatakan di sini terdapat satu kajian daripada Robert Yeo. Dia meneliti naskah-naskah awal Chye juga lebih menjurus kepada penulisan absurd seperti Beckett, UNESCO dan sebagainya lah. Dan 1984 adalah karya pertama anda yang pendekatannya agak berbeza, lebih pada politikal. Bagaimana anda boleh menuju ke arah gaya penulisan sebegitu?
Yes, when I was in university and I was writing plays, I was very much influenced by the absurdists. I suppose there was a time when I was questioning a lot about my own existence in this world, whether it had any meaning at all. So, but then in the 1979, I moved down to Kuala Lumpur to make a living. And, I came from Penang. In Kuala Lumpur, I saw more sharply the contradictions in society. Remember, that was also the time when, as I said, the new economic policy was already very much entrenched. And also I saw how at that time, was it already the Barisan Nasional? It was, wasn't it?
Yes.
Was bulldozing laws through parliament like nobody's business because they had their 2/3 majority, and it was very frightening. So I felt that I had to write something political now. I had to write about what was happening to my country. And that's why I changed from writing absurdist stuff, which I had outgrown anyway, and to write political plays. And it's been like that ever since. It became something of a habit. After that, I have been in a way, charting the political development of our country in my subsequent plays, like The Big Purge, which was inspired is not the right word, but it was inspired by Operation Lalang, and also
1987.
Yes, the 1987 Operation Lalang. The play has never been staged in Malaysia. Then after that, we could asterisk you, Mr. Birch, which was reacting to how politics was and how social life was in the 90s, while Mahathir was at the apex of his rule as Prime Minister. And then, of course, the latest one, Swordfish plus Concubine, which is very much a critique of what is happening today, really. Although it is basically centered around this covenant that we have with our leaders, citizens and leaders, this covenant which we must now, in the play, I say, re-examine and perhaps demolish.
Chye, can I take you a little bit back? So you mentioned Penang, and you were part of you were at USM.
Yes.
You were part of your degree was in
Humanities.
in humanities, but you actually were quite well known as someone who was actually doing a lot of plays.
That's right.
In Penang, you mentioned that you came back to KL. You came to KL. Just to give us a context of what the art scene was like then, were there other playwrights, were there other artists, not just playwrights, but visual artists, for example, that were also working and examining the political situation in their works in that time?
I think there must have been a few, but I was not too aware of that. And I don't think that there were a lot of playwrights around also at the time. And it didn't seem to me that playwrights were writing about the socio-political situation at that time. I think after that, there was a greater fervor for writing political stuff. But at that time, because I think in the early 80s, it was a time of uncertainty, a time of contradictions, a time we were beginning to see the beginning of the culture of fear setting in. And that was, of course, to escalate and culminate in 1987 in Operation Lalang. And after that, the culture of fear really, really set in.
Yeah. Thank you. It's very, very interesting sejarah. So kita pergi kepada bagaimana projek 1984-1994 ini bermula. Adakah naskah dah siap dan anda membawa kepada Krishen, ataupun Krishen mendekati anda cakap, why not you write this play? So how is it started dan bagaimana penubuhan produksi, bagaimana pemilihan pelakon dan sebagainya?
I wrote the play and then I presented it to Krishen, and Krishen said, okay, we'll do it. And then we got around to getting the people involved. We got Sabera Shaik in as producer. And then we started looking for actors. And we started rehearsing, actually, in 1984, because the plan was to stage it in 1984, because that is the year. But somehow one thing led to another. Krishen fell ill. And then I think I fell ill first, and then Krishen fell ill after that. And so the project was delayed until 1985. Yeah.
What was the casting like? How did you select your cast? Did you all have open auditions?
Krishen didn't have open auditions. He approached people to act in the play. His original actor for Wiran, the hero, was Anwar Noor Arai. You all remember him?
Yeah.
And Yone, originally, he was supposed to be played by, what's her name now? I can't remember her name. I cannot remember. I'm so sorry. Rohani Yusuf.
Rohani Yusuf.
Yes, yeah. And then I think after rehearsing for a while, I don't know what happened. I suppose they could have felt uneasy with the script and the content of the play, and decided to withdraw. And then Krishen approached Saleh bin Jonet to play Wiran, and Fatimah Abu Bakar to play Yone. Yeah. And I must say, they were excellent choices.
Thank you.
Yes, excellent indeed. I cannot see anybody else play Yone other than Fatimah.
Wow.
Really. Yeah.
Waited 33 years to hear that.
Jadi saya rasa soalan seterusnya boleh kita kepada pelakon. bagaimana reaksi anda bila baca skrip? Seperti Chye cakap tadi, bila membaca pelakon yang asalnya dan diorang refuse untuk menolak untuk tidak berlakon sebab ada perasaan takut. Dan bagaimana Fatimah dan juga Mano reaction pertama bila membaca skrip itu dan membuat keputusan okey amin.
Did you rasa takut? Were you frightened by it, by the script after reading it? Saya entahlah, saya macam suka. The moment I read the script, I think saya lagi more tertarik pada the play of characters. Yeah. Yes, of course, the political issue was, really, you cannot run away from that. But to me, the play, the emotional, what do you call it, the relationships, that to me was very important. And also saya suka sebab dia pada saya masa tu saya rasa itu satu naskah yang baru, a new thing, which got me very excited. It was not like after playing Gadis Desa and Gadis this and Gadis that. So this was something very, very new, very challenging. And and also the fact that I'll be working with ramai orang yang some I knew, some saya tak kenal, but it was an exciting moment to be a part of something new. So I don't know whether it was foolish because like he said, some people baca, lepas tu diorang rasa tak nak buat. Saya tak ingat, I don't remember being afraid. I was more excited, to actually get something off my chest also. What about you?
The word fear wasn't there.
Yeah, tak ada.
I think it's absurd to even think about it as fearful of what?
But Manu, I mean, are you saying that you had no hesitation at all? And I mean, as actors, because I mean, as Chye has just explained, there was a climate of fear.
Why would you even want to raise that question? What's there to be fearful in a four-letter word called play?
But I think
I mean, I'm not
But if
going
you
to
say that, then
stand
you're-
for elections.
but
I'm
would
not
you
going
then
to
say-
raise a demonstration. I'm not Bursay or I'm not anything. But as an individual who was approached by a director and says that, would you like to play this? And I said, can I have a look at it? What's it about? And then we discussed it. And I said, yeah.
So there was no hesitation. I mean, because I think just putting it in the context of the 1980s and what Chye has said about the climate of fear then, was there not a sense that this was a powerful work? Because to say then that it's
The
a
powerful
play,
work does not, you don't realize it when you're reading the script, which
Right.
is cold script. And then you go and have a look at it, and you look at it, and for my role, there was, your question is meaningless to me. If the same thing happened today, and I was to play something which eventually maybe looked at being controversial, that is an eventuality. But at the time I'm starting, that question doesn't apply.
Okay. So the
Why
echoes-
would I even hesitate when my friend writes a play based on a book which I'm very familiar with because I grew up with it, and that whole context of the mid-20th century, and our post-independence dilemma and all that. I was old enough to be part of that system. I wasn't in school anymore. And I was, therefore, what's there to be fearful about? Why are we even talking about fear in our society today? There are lots of people who are going around saying, you can't say that, you can't say that, there's a special branch for, hey, come on, guys.
True,
Yeah, I think Mano
There's
is
nothing
right
to
in
be
that
frightened
sense
about.
because
It does not, as the politicians say, it does not they always get away from discussing it by saying
Yeah.
it does not apply or it's not relevant.
Yeah, we're kindred spirits in that sense because when I wrote the play, of course I knew what the repercussions would be, but I said, what the hell? It's got to be said, it's got to be done. We cannot censor ourselves. And that is the point because I know what it is like, what censorship is like. I knew it firsthand working in a newspaper office. And what was worse to me at that time was self-censorship, which newspapers did all the time. And that's the reason why I wrote the play. It was also to hit out at self-censorship.
What is it about play form, therefore, right, that allowed you to say things that you would not be able to as a journalist?
Yeah. You see, in those days, you couldn't have discussed anything in the mass media on any controversial issues, or the people will just say it's too sensitive. No, and editors will not publish them. So what can you do? There was no recourse. I'm sure people who have lived through those times know what it was like. And so for me, the only way out then was to write a play, and take the consequences of it. We were worried that we wouldn't get a permit. In fact, we never expected to get the permit, and strangely, the permit came. It wasn't really strangely. I think Sabera did a wonderful job as producer. She was called up for an interview. In those days, you had to apply for a permit to stage a play.
Yeah.
Today
And,
also you still have to do it.
Today also, yeah. And so you have to submit your whole entire script, And one copy of the script goes to the special branch hall. Because special branch...
Somebody from special branch may even be here, because they like to come in and join in with the rest of normal people, And,
but why special branch? Because they are the arbiters of culture, you see. They are experts in culture, so they know
They're
whether
learned
the play is
people.
worthy of being staged or not. They can decide.
Anonymous but learned, to be feared.
So I think when Sabera was called up for the interview by DBKL, and I don't know who else was there, and she was asked to talk about the play, and she did a wonderful job of telling them what the play was about, and we got the permit. And then when the permit was given, word got around that, hey, if you want to see the play, you better go on opening night, because there may not be a second night. So of course we had full house. And then the second night was okay. We continued, and we continued and continued, and we got full houses every night. And I just heard from Mano today that there was not only full houses, there were a lot of people outside, because
Every night.
outside the auditorium, because they had to be turned away.
People,
Literally this term, no standing room even, actually did apply. And it was quite strange. It's quite a phenomenon. Maybe I just want to add one small thing.
Yeah.
I had the experience, unlike Fatih, I was never on stage. Big Brother is only seen on the screen, so I was filmed separately before the play. And so during the actual course of the play, I had this strange experience, never had it before, never had it since. As an actor in a play, you're actually part of the audience watching the entire play. And nobody knew who was who or what was what. And I could actually see my fellow actors with whom I have been rehearsing, but this time as a member of the audience. So I had this bicameral, that means twin split, experience of being there and not being there, and still being there, knowing both sides of it, being part of the audience and being part of the action. So the pennies were dropping in that sense. Things clicked. The meaning of the play was coming out. So I was not there under the lights. I was there in semi-darkness looking at it, and now that line makes sense. Now what the direction, Krishen's direction makes sense. Now I know what the dialogue makes sense, or what these characters they took for made sense. And it was a very much of a learning experience for me as an actor, knowing how the audience would perceive, and being part of the audience, and how an actor would perceive a particular role, or a particular sentiment, or a particular conviction, or a particular thread which runs through the whole play. And in this particular play, there was just not one thread. There was our nation, our young nation, and people who were born just after the Second World War and before our independence in 57, 12 years difference. And from that time on, these are the people who were actually feeling the birth of a nation and grappling with all kinds of issues. What is and what is not? What can and what cannot be? And who will not? Those kind of questions, because we have no preset, we have no a previous generation or whatever. We were starting brand new. So the questions which came out for performers, and I'm talking about directors and everybody else, the writers and everyone else who are involved in a production, is not only the people on stage, they're actually the retail end. You know, they are the
Mano,
ones
can we
which
come
people
back to
buy a ticket to
1984?
come and see.
Hello, you were talking about my play, you know. What are you talking about now?
Yeah. I'm talking about the play, but I'm saying that the concept of what you were trying to relay and what the passage of our own experience and the stage of our experience all clicked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I could see it as a member of the audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Chye, I want to ask you, the character of Big Brother in his bush coat, which was a uniform for our politicians, and sometimes still are, some of them still wear it. Was that a directorial choice, or was it something that you'd written into the play?
What I just wrote into it was that the party members all wore uniform. And Big Brother and the inner party members, inner party meaning those in the cabinet lah, they would have a name tag lah. Because if you remember in the early 80s, Mahathir was the one who introduced the name tag. So that was all. And then for Mano to end up wearing the bush jacket on the screen, that was Krishen's idea.
How much of the directing? How involved were you in the actual directing of the work and some of the choices?
Oh,
Was
very,
there a
very
strong?
involved.
Yeah.
We worked very closely together. I was also acting the play. I played Yone's father,
Yep.
and I also played all the three interrogators. And so we worked very, very closely. Krishen was very faithful to the script. What I wanted to see put on stage out of my play was put on stage.
Can you take us into the rehearsal room, if you can, back to kind of, in a way, it feels as if there was a sense of mission when you were staging this work, right? Like
A sense of mission.
a sense of mission, right? But, you've said that, that it was, in a way, an act against the culture of fear that existed. So there's a defiance I hear in what you're saying. Can you take us into some of the discussions that you had with Krishen and the cast about the purpose of the work and how do you draw meaning from it?
I don't think we really talked very much about it being a work of defiance with the cast, because for us, the most important thing was the play's the thing. So we do the play. How do we make it come to life as best as we can? So we talked about the technicalities of doing it, the logistics of doing it. I don't think we discussed very much that we wanted to, where we had this sense of mission, that we wanted to do something that would shake the establishment. No, I don't think we did that. We just carried on like it was a normal play and to be done in a certain way. Yeah. Of course, inevitably there will be discussions about, the politics of the time. Yeah.
Ni soalan untuk Fatimah Abu Bakar. Boleh ceritakan sedikit latar belakang anda? Saya difahamkan ibu anda adalah seorang bangsa Cina dan bagaimana membesar dalam persekitaran keluarga campur pada ketika itu. Dan of course dalam karya ini juga bagaimana ia memberi impak kepada lakonan anda dalam 1984.
Okay, masa tu at that time I think saya going back to where my latar belakang, kalau ikut my family history, on my father's side, my ancestors came from Hyderabad. On my mother's side came from Hainan, China, and then suddenly, then in Malaysia, okay, then so Hyderabadi and Chinese woman got married, and then growing up, I never felt any different. So pada saya, as I was growing up, it was like everybody else is the same. Yeah, so I didn't feel any kind of racial, tak ada, whether I was not one, but I was very, so that created a problem for me when, for example, like filling in forms kat sekolah where you had to be of one particular race. So that was a bit difficult for me. I remember it being difficult, and then it became when I refused to be bothered by it anymore. But when I was bothered, I would put either tick all three, all three races, or dan lain-lain.
Yeah.
And I would get into trouble with the cikgus lah. But after a while, I decided, I don't know, because out of, don't want to rock the boat or got fed up of, answering, I just followed, whatever was like, tidak akan mengakibatkan any more problems. But yeah, I didn't feel any sense of being different. Only when I was, later on, when you grow up, then later with all the different problems and all that, then you started questioning. But even then, it was not a problem for me. When the play came, like I said, I suppose it was because of feeling very not belonging to a particular race in that sense. So when I saw the play, I saw it as macam antara dua darjat, but not so much as in races, but more like social classes. Yeah, basically that. And I like the play about the tension caused by certain things if you are not part of a certain thing.
Yeah.
Right? So that would cause a problem if you don't necessarily belong to one particular thing or party or ideology or something. So I like that. But saya tak rasa kalau nak ikut macam latar belakang dia kata, sama ada saya terpengaruh dengan saya punya latar belakang. At that moment tak terfikir pun. Yeah. To me, I got a role that I wanted to do as an actor. Saya suka, and there was an opportunity, ada peluang untuk saya kerja dengan orang yang saya nak kerja. Yeah, to work with people I enjoy working with. I don't know whether it was a conscious effort to also like not be too particular one race, because even like masa what you were saying about the May 13. I remember I was a teenager then. None of my immediate family members were involved, but my father was a male nurse then, and we were in Sungai Bakar. The hospital, we were in Sungai Bakar. And I can remember tiap-tiap hari dia balik, he was very tired, he was very sad, he was very broken, because he would see the amount of people coming in yang kena tetak, kena pukul, kena bakar, and there were people of all races. So, and I remember him saying like, why are they doing this? Kenapa? Bila you dah bunuh, dah tetak everybody, when the bodies came in, he said he couldn't recognize whether they were Indian, Malay, Chinese or what. Okay, sebab you couldn't see. And he would be, and I could remember him not wanting to even eat for a long time. He had lost his appetite. And he would also tell stories about how there was one particular, I remember one story he said that in this one area, I can't remember where, close to where we were, one Chinese family was almost wiped out, except for one boy who survived because the Malay neighbours eventually came to their rescue. They were the only one or two isolated Chinese families there in a predominantly Malay punya area. But then the Malays came and rescued this boy. And when people accused, like orang Melayu dalam kampung ni, kenapa you buat kat this family, and they were very angry because they said we will never do that to these people ada macam saudara, and in the end apparently it came like the people who attacked the Chinese family were from another place, and they said they were Boyans from another community, Boyans from Jawa Timur, So, but it will come back to the fact that my father would say like, it really doesn't matter. So I don't know whether that was because he had married a Chinese, and we grew up very multiracial, that kita rasa that when it comes to the crunch, the race really, really, really doesn't matter when it really comes to the crunch, So I don't know whether it was because of that, that when I read your play, it was like, it was, I can fit in anywhere. I can fit in anywhere. Any of the roles you give me, I'll play you.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
I actor play any role lah,
Chye, I mean, that raises a point that we were talking about just now, where, first the plays, while ostensibly, anyone can say it's very familiar to the Malaysian landscape, but it's not set in any particular country. although it says that, race is what divides the people, we never know what the actual kind of race is not set in any kind of particulars, right? Tell us about that and why you chose to do that.
Yeah, I suppose if I had placed it right in Malaysia directly, we wouldn't have got the permit at all.
Yeah.
So it had to be allegorical in that sense. So that's why. That's the only reason really for it.
Yeah.
But I think the audience, of course, was smart enough to make the connections. I mean, you could not make the connections. It's so obvious, isn't
Obvious,
it?
yeah.
And then because in order to distinguish the party members from the pros, I had the party members speak in standard English and the pros in Manglish.
Yeah.
So it was,
Explain Manglish. Some may not know.
Mano, you're the expert.
No.
Why you so like that one?
Why you so like that?
Why you so like that one?
Mano, you explain lah.
When Kee Thuan Chye
Stress.
writes a play,
Stress,
it's
stress.
in English, but by the time the actors go through it, it becomes Manglish.
Well, I must say that in terms of the casting of Big Brother, even when I was writing it, there was no dispute as to who would play it.
Actually, why?
I mean, and if you ever saw the play, I mean, Mano carried it off superbly, and nobody else, I think, at that point in time, would have had that kind of presence and stature to do it.
Sense of
Bosco, Bosco de Cruz.
Bosco was around still, right?
Yeah, he was still around. I mean, he would have been bigger than life.
But Bosco would have been Bosco lah. And then
comment
he
to
did it all in one day.
One
Oh,
All
the
in one
recording.
day,
Oh,
yeah.
sure.
It was recorded on film. He doesn't appear at all on stage,
stage,
but he appears on the screen.
I was considered a pariah. And anyone who is Big Brother is one. And there are several of them running several countries in the world today. Footnote.
Excuse me.
And it's also very timely that we're talking about it during election time, isn't it? Okay. Sorry.
Which we'll get to. But I think what we would like to, because the three of you went through it and you've got perhaps some obviously hindsight. I think what would be good is if we can actually try and get a sense of how the work was received. And yes, there've been there were positive reviews and there were reviews that eventually landed you in a lot of hot water as well.
Yeah.
Unintentionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to, come back to this idea of the play and using the play as a medium. I think Fasyali's pointed out that a lot of your earlier work was absurdist theatre. In this particular work, you moved into, kind of political theatre. It's allegorical, but it's also in many ways very obvious, right?
You want to use the word in your face. Yes, it was. It was agitation propaganda. It was my propaganda. I mean, it was really in your face because there was no other way you could get anything across in those days, and you had to do it in your face. A lot of people say, "Oh, in your face is not art," and well, for a while I was quite apologetic about it. Oh yeah, my plays, agit-prop lah. You can see it's also a didactic. It's in your face. It's not art lah. But now as I get older and hopefully wiser, I feel that there's a lot of room in this world for all kinds of plays. In your face or what. And I don't care if you don't call it art. It's fine, but it still has a valid place. I mean, like this world is big enough that Pakatan Harapan should have the next 5 years at least to be the government, right? Yeah, it's a big world. So I don't feel apologetic about it anymore. And people tell me, oh, your place is so in your face and all that. Oh, well, so what? You don't like it, don't see it. Yeah. Okay, I don't call it art. I don't pretend to write art anyway. Okay, I write what I feel I should write about. I try to do the right thing. And if it's not good enough.
But Chye, I mean, there is no level or a standard or, like, you must have
Precisely.
so many distinctions before you can go to the next level or, from Form 5 to Form 6 or something like
Precisely.
that. There is no barrier.
There are no well-defined
what you
rules.
did
What
was
is art? Yeah?
What's art? Is
Yeah.
art. And will continue to be art. And that's what people flock to see. It was also about ourselves, which gave them that, like, first time you can see something in a mirror kind of feeling. But it was art. I don't know why you're saying it was not art, or you were just writing.
It wasn't me saying, it was people saying. Then, as I said, I felt apologetic about it for a while.
But
Remember,
it's entered the canon as one of the seminal plays in Malaysia. So I think the question of whether it's a piece of art or not is decided a long time ago, right? I mean, we wouldn't be here if this was not a piece that was interesting from an artistic point of view as well, right? So maybe talk a little bit about Yone's character's father and the relationship she has with her father when she starts dating,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Of course, Yone is a pro. So pro is the other race.
The minority.
The
The
minority
yeah.
race. And of course, he's a bloody racist. He doesn't want his daughter, Yone, to go out with party members. See? And then one night he catches her coming home, a bit late. He confronts her and asks her who you went out with. She wouldn't say at first, but then eventually she tells him, party member. And then he said, wow, you went out party with party member? Then that got him ballistics, and she attacked her, he attacked her mother. He went out
With a
to the
parang.
kitchen and took out a cleaver and wanted to cut her up and all that. You see, so yeah. So the play also shows the kind of bigotedness that arises when you
Yes.
divide people.
True.
When you have division, race divisions. And at that time, I felt it very much, and I think a lot of people did also, with the NEP, because the NEP created schisms, it created divisions among the people. Why? First of all, the term Bumiputra and non-Bumiputra, it makes you different people, but we are all Malaysians. And that's what the play at the end calls for, integration. That's what the play is also about. Where, there's multiracialism, there's integration, there's acceptance, there's belonging.
Yeah, because if you don't, then you create monsters on both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so it's like one calling the other. But it's like that you're actually behaving like, each other. So so when is it going to end? When is it going to stop? Yeah.
Patti, what was it like to act with Saleh bin Jone?
Saleh bin
Jone, yeah.
Yeah, he. Well, I was telling Chye earlier before we started that one of the more anxious moments was waiting whether he would turn up initially for rehearsals, because he was going to, like Chye mentioned that Krishen was not well and Chye was not well. Saleh was also going through a certain period in his life. So there were moments during rehearsals where we would wait, not knowing whether he would turn up. So that was very anxious lah, But he was brilliant.
Yes.
He was brilliant. I suppose, having said about, he brought with him a tortured spirit, which
You're right.
I think only Saleh can explain where he got that from. Those who knew Saleh would know a little bit, would understand. But his energy level was amazing, and to bounce any actor he would be a dream sparring partner for any actor. You just bounce off the energy. You comes and there were some bad hair days where you don't tired, whatever. But the moment he got into dia punya, into his role, his first few lines, it's like you just couldn't not get or receive and work and respond to that energy.
Just to briefly just give you all, some of you who may not know, Saleh bin Jonet was actually is a brilliant writer and actor and a poet. Sajak Saleh bin
He
Jonet.
was also a former lecturer.
Yes,
at Universiti Malaya.
University Malaya. I think the only lecturer who was given a lectureship with a bachelor's degree.
That's right.
Right. Because he was that brilliant.
And he
Yeah.
wore
Yes.
sarong to class sometimes.
Saleh bin Jonet actually more colourful than Viran.
Yeah.
But because he was Saleh bin Jonet with all the colours and texture and tu semua, he made a brilliant, sparring partner.
Right.
And
He was cut out for the role.
He was
because,
very much so.
He embodied that character.
Oh yeah.
He embodied that
The
spirit of
restlessness.
defiance.
Defiance,
And
yeah.
also uncertainty. Because
Yeah.
Viran
Yep.
starts out by being very uncertain. Yeah. And then as the play goes along, he becomes more and more defiant.
Yeah.
And so I think if anybody had to do what Saleh did at the end of the play, which was to come out of it and address the audience and ask them, are you going to sit here and do nothing? Are you going to stand up for racial equality, for racial integration, for a united nation?
Chye, can I stop you? Can I just get you to give a context to the audience a little bit? Because that's where your play departs from the novel very clearly, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's a kind of stylistic change that you introduced in the work.
That it departs from the novel. It's very in your face, you see. It's
That's the phrase for the day.
it's very agit-prop kind of technique. Viran joins this movement for better Malaysia, so to speak. And so he gets arrested, and then he's sent to for interrogation, and he finds that the Minister of Truth and Information has actually played him out. And then he's sent to room 101, where he's subjected to torture if he says anything. So if the minister says, "What is 2 plus 2?" and Viran says 4, then the minister says, "What if I say it's 5?" Viran says, "It's still 4." You get a bolt of pain, you see. Because it was the state's way of trying to control your
Blurring the
mind.
truth lah. You blur
To
the
control your mind, like what is happening now with the anti-fake news law. When the state can tell you that news about 1MDB has to be reviewed by the government first before it can be considered not fake news. It's the same in that way. So eventually, the First Minister of Truth and Information then tells Viran, "I'm going to show you a videotape of Yone. And you will see that she's making love to somebody else. She has betrayed you. She's actually one of us." And he shows the videotape. And Viran says, "Shut it off." And then the minister said, "Oh, would you like to go and smash it? Smash that the video and all that." So he lets Viran go. Viran then attacks the minister and runs out of room 101. And then that is when he addresses the audience.
So the
full
fourth
on.
wall breaks on.
Yeah.
Fourth wall, breaks, And of course, there are supposed to be like police sirens and all that. And the question at the end of the play is, will the audience save Viran from the police? And then he addresses them all. And he asks them, "Are you going to sit here and do nothing?" And I think if it wasn't somebody like Saleh bin Jonet with that innate sense of passion, Passion, I think is the word, because he has a lot of passion. It wouldn't have been carried off so well.
What was the response from audiences?
Sorry?
What was the response from the audience?
Were any of you there? Did any of you see it? Because I don't want to say anything that might turn out to be fake.
They're all so young. Yes. They're all so young.
Well, the audience, I would say that there were people who stood up and people said yes, yes, yes. Yeah, there were every night. Every night. I mean,
I can attest to it. Yeah.
varying numbers for different productions. Yeah. It could have been more like a unanimous sort of thing, but it didn't happen to be unanimous, to be honest. But there were enough people saying yes, because it was like a release of their own pent-up frustration of not being able to talk about all these things, except in coffee shops in those days. And then to be part of a communal experience, and I think that is the important aspect of the production, to be part of a communal experience where people could say, you know, could at least express this frustration in that way. I think that was important to them.
So you mentioned about breaking the fourth wall, and I think sebelum ni ada, saya rasa itu bukan satu pendekatan yang baru, tetapi ada mempunyai sedikit berkaitan atau persamaan dengan approach yang digunakan oleh Brecht, German director and playwright. Bagaimana ia mempengaruhi pengkaryaan anda pada ketika itu? Adakah anda secara sedar atau tidak sedar?
I'm always puzzled when people say that I'm influenced by Brecht. I've only read a few of his plays. I've never studied Brecht deeply. I was, as an undergraduate, mostly influenced by the absurdists. And in fact, what influences me most from 1984 here and now onwards has been traditional Malay Sian theatre. Traditional theatre has been, and I have been exploring that in my plays since I started doing it in 1984 here and now. The wayang kulit scene, for instance, in the play, which was in the original script. It was not something conceived during rehearsal. And then, of course, when I wrote my next play, The Big Purge, which was inspired by Operation Lalang, half the play was done wayang kulit style, and half of it by human performers. Then, when I did We Could Asterisk You, Mr. Birch, Silat, other things came in. And then Swordfish plus Concubine, Bangsawan, DK Barat, Gamelan, a lot of other things, very eclectic. So, my influences now are very eclectic. I borrow from here, there, everywhere. And I'm not conscious that I'm influenced by Brecht at all, because Brecht has this idea of the alienation effect, which is to prevent the audience from being drawn emotionally into the play that they are watching, so that they can then step back and think about it. But on the contrary, I want my audience to feel the emotions. I want them to be sad when it calls for them to be sad. I want them to be happy when it calls for them to be happy. I want them to be to sympathize with the characters. I mean, they had to sympathize with the characters of Wiran and Yone in 1984 and Here and Now. Otherwise, the play wouldn't have worked. So, yeah, I think the short answer is that I'm not conscious that I'm inspired by Brecht at all.
And sorry, you and you mentioned also that previously you cakap pasal this play is also reflect from new economic policy, and you also mentioned in this play about national cultural policy, that which this policy berlaku selepas race riot, dan dia memberi kesan, saya kira memberi kesan kepada karya ini. Dan also you said tadi menggunakan wayang kulit, gamelan dan sebagainya. Dan bagaimana pula cultural policy, dasar kebudayaan kebangsaan itu mempengaruhi terhadap karya ini, ataupun anda dalam play ini anda menolak tetapi anda turut menggunakan, you know.
Fasyali, I don't give a damn about national culture policy. I don't give a damn about any kind of culture policy. A culture policy straitjackets everything. It makes artificial what should be natural and organic in development. How can you go and tell people this is how national culture should be? That's not the way. That is, you're offering an artificial construct.
So
I
was
don't
the
agree with
Chye,
that.
but I think the question is, so was this play then, in a way, a critique of the policy? Because you used the lion dance scene,
That's
for
right.
example, right?
That one, yes, that aspect, I was critiquing the national culture policy because it says, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the national culture policy, it says that it should be based on Malay and Nusantara culture. Am I right?
Number one, yeah.
Nusantara, you know, that means Indonesia included. Indonesia, no. We are Malaysia, you know.
But I think it meant, I mean, sorry, if I can just say that, I think the idea of Nusantara then is a pre-national Nusantara, right? It doesn't mean, I don't think it's thinking about the constructs of post-colonial states of Malaya, Brunei, Malaysia. I think it's talking about, in the same way that you would say you would use wayang, and someone in Indonesia will say, well, that's not Malaysian, that is Indonesian.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
these are artificial, these are
Alright. Okay.
constructs, right? Pre-national constructs, right?
Okay, fine. Plus, suitable elements from immigrant cultures. What the hell is suitable? How do you define suitable elements, for crying out loud? And that I have always been arguing against in a lot of the articles that I've written throughout the years. You know, first of all, artificial construct, then you talk about suitable elements. That's bloody insulting. What do you mean by suitable? You mean other cultures, they have elements that are not suitable? Like what? So lion dance, not suitable. In the 80s, you had to apply for a permit, you know, to do lion dance. Ridiculous. So that's why in the play I have it, I use it as tiger dance. As part of the allegory.
Okay, so in answer to that question, I mean, obviously the work
There is such a
was,
thing
you know,
called-
it was a critique of some elements of
Oh,
the
yeah,
national culture
definitely,
policy, right?
You know what that means.
I want to come back, sorry, to this thing about, you know, about the intervention that the audience is empowered, and it sounds like, it feels like there are elements of forum theatre in there, that you've empowered the audience to decide on the ending of the work, right?
Yeah.
So again, I guess the question that we're interested in is, you know, were you influenced by a kind of external kind of theatre practice, because that would have been quite fashionable then, or was this something that came organically from your own experience?
Right. Before you start telling me that I'm also influenced by
It's a
Augusto Boal
question.
and forum
It's a
theatre,
question.
I would like
It's
to
a question.
say, I would like to clarify that at that time I had never heard of Boal and I had never heard of forum theatre.
Right.
So for me, it was a choice that came organically
Why?
because I wanted it to become something that would give the audience that communal experience I spoke about earlier. I wanted to give them the chance to speak up, because that's what the character Viran tells them, speak up, speak up. If you love this nation, speak up. And that's the reason. That for me was the one way to do it, to confront them and give them that platform when theatre no longer becomes theatre. And this is foreshadowed by a leaflet that we put out during intermission. We give out to the audience members, telling them that at the end of the play, you know,
Yep.
it will no longer be theatre, and you know, you can do whatever you want. That is the real reason.
So you know, you've talked about how people were turned away at the door. So obviously we knew that there was a real hunger, people wanted to come and see it, but there's also this sense that this was quite precarious because there was a chance you would be shut down. Were there negative responses to the work?
Were there negative responses? Oh yes, immediately after that. Because what happened was, Kee Das, whom I respect a lot, he
was a journalist who was writing for the Far Eastern Economic Review at
That's
that point.
right. And he wrote a piece on 1984 Here and Now in the Far Eastern Economic Review. And one of the things he questioned was how it managed to get a permit for staging. So the next production that Five Arts Centre was going to do was a one-man play called "The Coffin Is Too Big for the Hole," which is actually written by a Singapore
Singaporean.
playwright. And it is not controversial. It critiques Singapore in the sense that it critiques the standardization that's happening in Singapore. It does not say anything controversial about Malaysia. But we applied for the permit, and they kept us waiting, you know, and waiting and waiting. And the producer told us that she was called in for the interview, and then they said, by the way, the Coffin Is Too Big for the Hole is a one-person play, one actor only, and I was playing it. So the producer was called in, and the officer said, "Oh, Kee Thuan Chye, he's the one who wrote that play. Before this, he got us into trouble, you know, because of what he wrote, but what came out in the Far Eastern Economic Review. He says, we are a police state, right, in that play. Maybe we should show him what a police state really is like." This is all anecdotal. That's what the producer told me. And sure enough, we were kept waiting for the permit for The Coffin Is Too Big for the Hole. And 3 hours before opening, they said no. 3 hours. People came to the door and had to be turned away. So we finally had to do it in a private studio, and then ask people to come and see through word of mouth. Yeah, that was how bad. And then later on, when I was directed a one-woman play called Madam Mao's Memories, which starred Fatimah, and we rehearsed for about 2 months. We were also told no permit. Yeah, maybe that one was not just me. It was also because it was Madam Mao.
Madam Mao Zedong.
Communist. It's
Listen,
got nothing to
innocuous
do
enough.
about
It's
communism, right?
nothing.
Yeah, but they say
Yeah.
cannot.
Yeah, Madam
Cannot
Mao
do.
ada Kee Thuan Chye. Of course lah, cannot.
But anyway, that one we managed to do a performance at the
Merciful
Commonwealth Club.
Yeah, we had one
Show,
one
private show.
at least, yeah.
What were the reviews like to 1984?
Oh,
Aside from the Kedas piece we've spoken about.
to be honest, there were some that were positive. There were some that were lukewarm. There were some that drew parallels with the real situation and said that it was lacking, and so on. So yeah, there were good ones. There were not so good ones.
Mano, did you experience anything? I mean, were there any repercussions in being in 1984 here and now?
Personally? No. I thought it was very soft. It wasn't that punchy or anything. It was just a story. I mean, it happens all the time. Cross-ethnic, cross-racial. Chinese boy, Malay girl, whatever. They get together, and it's been happening ever since, I believe, about at least 2,000 years in this country. We are something like Pudu Raya, People, if you look at the map, you'll find this little thing sticking out from the belly of Asia, surrounded by seas, one side China and the Pacific Ocean, the other side India and the rest of the world. And we are right in between. So people who had to go one way or the other had to come here and deposit things. So things which are different in terms of values, the way we look, the color of our skin, the speech, our belief system. In other words, what makes us human will have to be different because we have been, like Pudu Raya, people come, people go. People come, people go. And some get to stay behind. And then they become more and more what we call multiculturalized, if there is such a word, because that's what we are. I mean, you can pretend to be just pure Malay, you can pretend to be pure Brahmin or whatever. There is no such thing as a purity in race. Never has been. Because civilized human beings have been on this planet for more than 50,000 years. And we have been around for, 60 years as a nation. And by the time we started playing roles as citizens of an emerging nation, we already have those 2,000 years of civilization from China, Huangho Valley, from Indus Valley, from everywhere, from Mesopotamia and all that. And then later on, the Johnny-come-latelys, the white guys came in, the Japanese guys came in. And so, where do you draw lines? Where's the difference? What's the big deal? So people have to make big deals. And people with small hands and small pea brains make those big deals. And then you have children come and ask their parents or whatever and say, Daddy, like this true? And then it's so hard to explain a reality to them and the reality which they may be facing when they grow up to be adults. And there are a lot of young people over here. And you've got the best part of your years in front of you. Things will be different as time goes on. And the speed of change in Malaysia is very fast. As if we have got in a hurry, we must catch up because we are only 60 years old, And, we started again in 1970 after 1969, Then every time again, whenever somebody's wife tells the Prime Minister and then tells, they become different again, So this thing becomes, these differences become clash.
Yes.
But here, in this play, what we're trying to show is, hey, this is a mirror.
Right.
And it's a story based on another story.
So,
But the reality then kicks in and the reality bites.
right.
That's the effect of this play.
So, it's been how many years now? 20 years? My
30
math is
over
quite-
years.
30 years. Yes, 30 years, yes, you're right. 30 over years. Some of the issues that you raised in the play don't seem to have gone away at all. What's your feeling? And I'm going to ask maybe each of you to, because we want to open it up to the audience. So just if you can kind of, distill for me and for us, what's your feeling about the play now? Both as something that you created. Would you write the same play today? One, and do you think that, are you proud of the play today?
Yes, of course I am. And I thank you very much for giving it that place, which I'm not sure that it deserves. But nonetheless, I'm very grateful. I was very shocked when Loh Kok Man staged a Mandarin translation of the play last year at New Era College, 30 over years later. And the issues are still the same. They haven't left us. What's happening to this country? Mano says we want to change at a rapid speed, but when it comes to these things, we're not changing.
We can't change.
It's incredible. So, yeah. Just the other day, my good friend Zaharom said, especially now, it should be restaged because in the wake of the redelineation, the fake news bill and all that, it would be very relevant today to stage it again. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe the impact won't be as great as it was in those days, because now there's so much theatre going on now, or people don't take so much serious interest in theatre, I don't know. And also because, really, the realm of the theatre has been usurped by the politicians who theatricalize reality every day.
That's a good one.
You know?
Can I?
Yeah, they theatricalize reality.
every day.
Shall I spell it out for you?
Theatricalized reality.
They are
every day.
the politicians, the leaders especially, are the best actors, and their advisors and all are the best stage managers. And the launching of the BN Manifesto, that's theatre. And they have a wider reach. They can produce theatre on a bigger scale that no theatre group can ever emulate.
unlimited budget some more.
So paid for by us,
Yeah.
Oh.
And can we put over in other countries also?
Oh, yeah, exactly. So
There's so much material to write, guys, We were focusing, and Chye was focusing on, and brought it down to race, right? But there's much more than just race, as you would know, which are also sensitive, which are also in many homes and many institutions. You don't raise the head, you talk in muted whispers at best. But there are lots of areas in which we, as a country, during the time when it was written, when it was made that kind of impact, that we have now sort of like standardized, normalized, and so forth. So if you were to bring this play again, to put it together and today and say, 30 years ago, someone wrote a play, a bunch of people came, danced around, and Krishen Jit directed this, and it took place in the University of Malaya. Okay, take that and say we are now doing the same play again, and it's up to the director whether to bring it up to date or whether to have it just as a classic and repeat it, or even, as tendencies tend to go, make it into a musical. And see you sing it, Then later on it becomes animated. No, I'm talking
That is a
reality.
challenge. I think that's a challenge somewhere.
I'm involved in all these industries and how the different industries, the animation industry, the music industry, and so on and so forth, you can take the same content and make it relevant in a different art form. Can even be comics, for God's sake. That's the next logical thing, so that younger people or people who don't want so many fancy words can just read through and get the story and get the punch and get the reality out of it. And what bigger reality that we have than the fact that, hey, 60 years ago we were formed and now we're still talking about the same kind of issues. Aren't you ashamed? Haven't you grown up? Haven't you gone further? Those are the questions. And maybe this will be one of the provoking thoughts which we already have in hand, and the reality of it actually being a bestseller.
Yeah. Fatih, I'd like to give you the last word before we open for questions. What's your feeling about the play, having, it's 34 years now since it was staged?
Yes, I think it will be interesting to find out, to restage it. But I think we'll still be asking the same questions. I don't think those questions will be answered. Well, it's not been answered for the past 30 over years. Probably take more than another 30 or more years for the same questions to be answered. I think for as long as we are kept in our little boxes, by you-know-who, we will still look at each other very suspiciously. We will still look at each other in terms of color and what we don't know, we will remain afraid of. So I think we should try and fight that in our own way, on a personal level. Get rid of the phantoms, get rid of those walls, get rid of, I don't know what, for us to see each other as seriously another human being, and not just somebody whom somebody has created to be an enemy of. Again, who is playing those mind games? We can also play. If somebody up there wants to control minds and create a certain kind of environment, then maybe we can play our own mind games and break that environment. So I don't know. So in that context, yes, we must stage this play again, and I don't know, and then maybe leave it the opening, the ending maybe come earlier, and get people to come in, and have certain lines ready for people. Okay, in this part we're now going to invite some of you to come over and play certain roles, and those roles will already be. So then you go and you see what it's like to play the other. All right, it's very important to play the other, because for as long as we remain in our very comfortable hole, comfortable box, it's like, whatever happens to them, okay lah, lantak lah, because it's not us. And I think we should stop this them and us thing lah, we should. It's about time.
Yes.
If Fatih can find sponsor.
Fancy sounds like she could direct it, actually. Sounds like a good
Chye,
treatment.
Viran and all that, they would be now in their 50s, 60s at least, right?
Shush.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Just right,
And then,
but
why don't you write a sequel that the same characters now, one owns a big condominium unit in this place, and then the other is whatever,
I've
you know.
thought of that.
So pick a few characters and then write a sequel to it. And as per today's reality. It'll be very interesting.
I
And
think-
don't limit to 5 days. Have a 5-month run throughout the country. And you'll find enough audience. I mean, just allow me to just say this a little bit. Theatre has been around a long, long time. I mean, Greek theatre, what theatre, and all that. Our traditions go way back, older than even religious thought, you know. And these are the things which people lived for, worked for, and gained commonalities and common grounds, which led to marriage and, you know, all those kind of things. Cultures grew from it and grew from it. So why don't we do that? We are young, but at the same time we are like, you know, Malaysian society is, I feel, is very much like, well, if you take 5,000-6,000 years from China and India and Middle East and the West and only put it together, we have got something like about at least 20,000 years of human experience, songs, melodies, literature, and all those things running in our blood. This is the base from which we can create a whole new society coming with so much diversity, so much history, that we are right at the threshold where the place stopped, right? And now the reality begins. And this generation of people who are here mainly, the younger people especially, you've got another 30, 40, 50 years in front of you. Just imagine what you can do.
Yeah.
And those are the things which plays like Chye's 1984, and there's a whole bunch of other plays. There are a whole bunch of other playwrights also in this country, and it's not just one or two. So what I'm saying is we have reached that 60 years as a nation, and what are the things which will take us beyond? And one of them is the power of the pen being mightier than the sword. Whoever said that first, I don't know. The pen being mightier than the sword. And many things are happening, even right now in the last few days in the Middle East and all that, in Syria and all that, where the sword seems to be the one, the last, you know, the last arbiter. This is how we solve things. Well, the power of the word has always been more dominant. We need more Kee Thuan Chyes.
Right. So I think that's a good, point to maybe say we'd like to hear your voice, and we'd like to open it up for questions from the floor. There are microphones that are going to be handed out. So please, we'd really like to hear your questions for the panel. It's quite an unusual situation to have 3 of our senior artists on the stage.
And 3 different races, I just noticed. And got gender, you know.
I alone got 3 already.
She alone got 3
I
already,
alone
yeah.
got 3 already.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, Assalamualaikum dan selamat petang. Saya Muhammad Fadil Hakim bin Asmawi dari Fakulti Filem dan Animasi UiTM Puncak Perdana. Okey, jadi saya nak mengajukan soalan. Dalam kita menghasilkan satu karya, yang mana bagaimana kaedah ataupun cara untuk kita berjaya menarik perhatian berbeza bangsa dan latar belakang, kerana kita di Malaysia memang hidup Cina, India, Melayu dan sebagainya, nak menarik tanpa menyentuh sensitivity. Dalam erti kata lain, kita nak menyatukan bangsa-bangsa ni dalam erti tidak ada rasis, tidak ada perpecahan, tapi nak menyatukan dan menarik perhatian untuk menyaksikan tu teater atau persembahan kita. Harap dapat bagi pendapat.
I think it all depends on your intent. If your intent is not to be racist, but on the contrary, to be embracing and inclusive, the play you write will not come out racist, even if you show your watak to be racist. It's like in 1984 Here and Now. Yone's father is shown to be very racist. But the intent of the play is to show the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry. Don't hold back. I always say, don't censor yourself. Don't start to think, oh, if I write it like this, it's going to be sensitive. People are going to react to it sensitively. Don't worry about that. That's not your problem. Your problem is tell the truth. Tell the truth, the way you see it. Your truth may not be the same as somebody else's truth. It doesn't matter. It is your truth that is important. And you write it the way you see it, the way you think. I'm sure a lot of people didn't agree with my truth in 1984 Here and Now. There would have been people who disagreed with it vehemently. I don't care. This is the way I see it. That's the way I write. It's my work. You don't agree, it's fine. We can always not agree. We don't always have to agree on, you know. That doesn't mean, therefore, that we become split up.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So just follow your heart. Kalau niat betul, karya akan cemerlang.
Ada lagi soalan? The floor?
Ooh, a birthday t-shirt.
Hello. Yes. Just want to ask, if the play 1984 is staged again, let's say if the government changes, how do you think the play would be different? What are the updates that you will put in the play? Thank you.
I think if the government changes, it may not have so much resonance because we won't know what the new government is going to be, how it's going to behave.
Not yet.
Yeah, we won't know if it's going to act like Big Brother. Although, if the government changes, the original Big Brother will be the one in charge. So it may have to be tweaked to make sure that Big Brother, the original Big Brother, doesn't behave like he used to in the 80s. Yeah. But I think in terms of the racial elements and all that, those will still be relevant. Yeah. And also, the play, which I didn't touch on earlier, also critiques the rise of religious conservatism. Because in the late 70s, the Islamic Revolution started in Iran. And it had a great effect on Islamic countries after that, Malaysia included. And what happened was that PAS at the time, being the Islamic Party, became very gung-ho and, you know, in terms of fostering this sense of Islamism. Retaliating against that, the Barisan National Government at that time had to prove that it was even more religious and Islamic than PAS. And that started this religion game, which accelerated the rise of religious conservatism, which has now come to the stage that we see today. So the play also critiques that. Yeah. So that can also be tweaked, maybe enhanced. But it will have to be updated.
Yeah, there's one question.
Well, thank you all for one thing, for a very interesting panel.
your play was inseminated into KL theater at a time of political stress. And when I came to KL in the 90s, in the late 90s, there was another time of political stress around Reformasi. And the theater in KL was vibrant and brave. I mean, I could name productions like Accidental Death of an Anarchist and others that were really out to change the political scene and out to express a lot of the frustration. Now we're in another period of political stress, maybe even greater than Reformasi. Do you think Malaysian theater today is responding? And can we find productions and playwrights that are challenging the status quo and dealing with the corruption and the realities that we see in the newspapers?
Fatih, you answer that. You're more in tune with what's happening.
I don't know whether I can.
Mano?
Whether any playwrights will take that on. I'm not surprised if there are many who are already toying with the idea, but whether or not in smaller, in smaller plays, smaller productions, but I don't know whether or not they will see a bigger stage at this moment in time.
I think we saw last year Kandang, which was an adaptation of Animal Farm. It's done in Malay.
Did you see that? I missed that.
Datuk Sri, yes,
yeah.
which was a adaptation of the Scottish play by Shakespeare, also done in Malay.
Uda
It
dan
was
Dara
done-
that was done in
Yeah.
the kebun. I mean,
Yeah.
In the field.
Yeah.
in the field. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was, of course, Swordfish plus Concubine,
Yep.
which a lot of people ignored.
I went to see it.
Mano, anything to add to that?
I know we're going to meet and talk about certain things, so I'll talk more substantially on that one. But there are. It's just that there is a lot more competition these days from digital entertainment and social media and stuff. The world has changed a bit, and so the impact and the impact of staged plays, original works, seminal works, and all that will have to be re-examined and put into its proper place before we could actually see any trends meaning. Am I making sense on this one?
If I can actually invite our co-moderator Fasyali to actually answer that question.
I think, not saying that I watch a lot of Malaysian theatre right now, but I think there's a several playwrights.
He watches a lot.
Yeah, but there's several playwrights that we can and plays that we can pay attention. Especially nowadays, like millennial, they don't play YouTube or Twitter all the time, but they do theatre. Trust me.
Yeah.
Like names like Ridwan Saidi, and we have now shows at DPEC, written penned by Malay, young Malay from UiTM, and talk about how corrupt is our education system. And they talk, they're really brave to talk, to discuss about it in very small theatre.
Small, yeah. That's what I
Maybe
said,
we cannot see them in a big theatre, like 1,000 seats.
Precisely, not
But
yet,
but like 100, 200 seats, I think, and we can see them. We need to go and approach them, and I believe now the youth talk about it, and they're very brave.
Yeah, I think it's a bit, Malay theatre seems to be undergoing a bit of a renaissance.
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
kind of 1970s feel again.
Yeah,
That actually the
that's
energy is
right.
really in
That's
Malay
true.
theatre
Yeah.
more than in English theatre.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
Quickly add, there is actually a flyer outside about an upcoming Malay theatre performance. So please pick it up
Is it this one?
because they don't have a
I
lot
think
of
so.
Is this one?
Malam Jahanam.
advertising.
Is it this one?
Flyer as you
Because these are the groups that are not going to get any government money at all.
Yeah. So there are, yeah.
So the next question.
Yes, Marion.
Marion,
Marion?
Josiah, yeah.
Yeah, I think exactly what Fasyali said. It really is happening, and it is happening in small alternative ways.
Yep.
And it's happening more with Malay theatre. I went to see Ridwan Saidi's Theatre Modular last weekend. It addressed so many issues, 4 little playlets, so very good. In a dusty, dirty, difficult to get to gudang, Kongsi KL. There's a lot of good stuff happening out there, but you know, you have to make an effort to get there. I just wanted also to just add some nuggets to the special branch issue, because I think it's important to sort of get the story straight. So I
Sorry,
think
some people, one person here might not know who you are, so yeah, could you actually but also for recording, because you
for
know,
that
for
one
posterity.
person, if you don't know me,
Daktin.
pergi bunuh diri. Hi, I'm Marion De Cruz.
Who's one of the co-founders of Five Arts Centre and was executive producer and involved in many of the productions we're talking about today. So she speaks
Yes,
from...
I choreographed for
when she-
1984.
And the skirt, Yone won a war in the play was hers.
Apa dia? The war was mine. The
Yone wore the skirt that
Yeah.
it was your skirt.
The skirt that Yone wore was
Yeah.
my skirt from London pula.
I tell you.
I think I still have it. I can't wear it, but I still have it.
Put it up for auction.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we did all kinds of, you know, in those days, I mean, back to 1994 first. In those days, we couldn't afford to hire so many people for different things. So like, Ivy and I, we did costume, we did makeup, then I had to go and play gadumbak for the wayang kulit, and then we had to, so we drank a lot of gin while all this was happening. Backstage in UM. So when the article came out in Partisan Economic Review, it was the way that it came out. I think the line that was used by the writer was, Special Branch must have been asleep
Yes, that's
to
right.
have let this pass.
Yeah.
So that was very like, you know, sharp. So after that, Special Branch, they opened a file on us, Five Arts. They opened a file on Kee Thuan Chye. That's okay lah. You've got Taraf lah now, Special Branch has your file. So when it came to the coffin, I think there were 3 files, and we need to mention those 3 files. So there was the Special Branch file, which they had, I mean, there was the Five Arts file, which they went, oh. Then there was the Kee Thuan Chye file, so they go, oh. There was also a Kuo Pao Kun file in Singapore, not here.
Yeah.
Special Branch Singapore had a KPK file.
Because Ko Pao Kun was a senior playwright, for those of you who don't know, in Singapore, who was
writer.
actually jailed for 7 years.
Correct.
By the Singapore government.
For alleged, okay, we won't go into those details.
Well,
but
Marxist conspiracy.
Marxist conspiracy and everything. So they got 3 files to deal with. Hence the delay and the delay and the delay, and then they're trying to do research on KPK and what he was doing in Singapore at the time and so on, and then the rest is correct. But I think it's just important to remember that there was one more element. That
And the
was
work,
important.
although, yes, you say that the work doesn't have anything to do with Malaysia specifically, but the work is a work against authority. It is
Yes,
an
of course.
extremely anti-authoritarian work.
But after that, it's been done like nobody's business. Everybody's been staging it, and no problem at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and Madam Mao's Memories was also restaged eventually.
It was
right?
by, I don't know.
Swee
but
Kiong.
Not here.
Swee Kiong.
I don't know.
Swee Kiong staged.
Yeah, Swee Kiong did it. Okay.
Ah, okay.
More questions, please? Yes,
Yes, you have.
Dr. Charlene Rajendran.
Oh, Charlene.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you very much. Very pleased to be here with the 3 of you on stage and Marion in the house. Having done a bit of research on Krishen, who is the director, I just want to add to this document, as it were, what for me was a very striking aspect of the work, which I only saw on video, unfortunately. I was not there in the theatre, which was that party members and non-party members were cast across all ethnicities.
Yeah.
And so even though the play gets read as being about race and the construct of race, the writing and the staging really bent it and pushed people to rethink what was going on, so that the interrogators and the people who were part of Yone's family, really you had to push your own ways of viewing this construct, even though you found yourself going back to it. And therefore, I think the tiger dance that got choreographed and the wayang kulit staging that got choreographed as well, the media, became further ways in which this resource that Maniam Mano and Thuan Chye are talking about got really used in terms of a physical vocabulary and a visual vocabulary of the multiplicity of this heritage of this country, which gets divided and cut up and destroyed in the process of trying to keep it separate. But in those instances when it comes together, the world of 1984 in that space that Yone and Wiran live in suddenly opens up. And I think for theatre, because I do have a question at the end of it, there is that visceral emotive feeling that makes a difference. So I wanted to ask Thuan Chye 2 questions actually. If you say that politics has now overshadowed the stage in a way because there's so much of it, it's so dramatic, it's so theatrical, what is the place of the theatre making process, the live stage, the small space where you're not going to reach hundreds of thousands, you're going to reach a smaller group of people, which clearly you still believe in, otherwise you wouldn't have staged Swordfish and Concubine last year, you know, and that's a difficult task to take on. What is its capacity that the media, social media, Facebook, alternative journalism does not have, that is still worth retrieving and making sure lives? And the other is, what's your next play? Because in as much as there has been these shifts from one kind of writing to another, whether it's the sequel that Mano just suggested or something else that you're thinking about, because you took from the hikayat for Swordfish and Concubine, and your resources have been varied. I mean, you used 1984 and then history for Birch and so on and so forth. And so you've written No More Bullshit, or you've put together those kinds of writings. What's the next play, Kee Thuan Chye? Because we're waiting.
That's a tough one.
Start with the last question.
Last question, okay.
Your next
My dear wife has often said to me, you shouldn't keep on writing this kind of stuff. You know. People get tired of it. You should try writing something else. So maybe I should write a love story or what, or romance. Well, I don't know. I haven't had. I actually had planned to write something, you know, early part of this year, but then I've just got bogged down with so much work since I started taking on part-time teaching at Nottingham University, and then one thing after another. Then the elections are coming. I brought out a new book as well. So I haven't had time to, but I've been thinking a lot about something about the period of the Communist Party, which is an area that has not been looked at very much, and it's very controversial. You know, who were the communists? Were they villains, or were they heroes? Were they patriots, or were they terrorists? I think that's a very important area to look at. You know, was Jinping a monster, or was he actually a patriot who cared very much for his country and fought for it against the Japanese? I mean, we have done the Baling talks.
Yes.
Five Arts Center has done the Baling talks.
And the
I
lucky
have
communists are
participated
here
in it.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from the Baling talks transcript, you could see that actually Jinping is really a very intellectual person, and not at all the terrorist that he's made out to be. And during the Baling talks, he was always talking about the humanity of man. It was, from the Baling talks, you got the sense that he was actually played out by the opposing side. So, yeah, it's an interesting area to look at. I don't know if I will get down to doing it, but that is one possible area. Is theatre still relevant? Of course, theatre is always still relevant. It's just that it won't be as impactful as the theatre of the government leaders.
Excuse me.
But we still carry on. No choice, what to do? It's a compulsion, isn't it? Even if we are bogged down by difficulties, we still do it. Right, Mano? You've been at it for so long.
Any more questions here? Yes, Andrew.
Is there a way that maybe Playwright should be considering how to adapt to the internet age, short snippets, that kind of thing that people share online? You know, this maybe the era of big long plays may not be so relevant and can never compete with the big shows like the BN Manifesto. So maybe you should be thinking of more guerrilla style tactics.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. That's something that can be looked into, certainly. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions? If not, I actually would like to ask members of the audience, are there members who were involved in the original production or who actually watched it? Can I ask you to stand up, please? Yes, please. No, Vernon. Watched the play or you were involved. Can you actually share with us, you know, what role you played? And please, So, Marion, you've spoken, so maybe, can I actually, introduce yourself? And
I'm Zaharu. I teach at the Nottingham University. I watched the movie, the play, sorry. I watched the play. It inspired me a lot, actually. Before then, I'd come back and I started writing. Chye was the one who opened the writing for me. And I watched the play, and having been away for so many years, it made me feel very sad, because I thought that was really what's happening to this country. Sorry. Makes me feel sad now, 33 years later, seeing that things haven't changed, and in many ways they've gone bad, they've gone worse. So, it wasn't, for me, a very memorable experience to actually attend the play. And I'm very proud of getting to know all of them since then. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ivy, could you tell us what you were involved in?
Just two things. I remember when Vira, right? Viran, R-A-N, Viran, yeah. When Saleh bin Jonid gives that speech, and I'm not sure whether it was the last part or must have been the last part. See, at that time in 1985, the government just had built, or the Selangor government had just built the Marble Arch between Kuala Lumpur and Selangor. Okay. And it cost 1.2 million ringgit, which is like so little when you think about it now, right? 1.2 million ringgit. And he makes a speech and he suddenly goes, and that arch cost 1.2 million. And everybody started clapping because we were so angry at 1.2 million ringgit being wasted. And now, are we that angry about 2.6 billion? You know, that's the thing. And I actually disagree with you that things are the same. For me, as an activist and also, of course, a theatre person, I actually think more Malaysians show less fear. You know, I think there is definitely a movement. I think definitely people are speaking up, and especially I look at millennials and young people. So I'm actually very hopeful. I think it was not as bad. In 1985, we were all a little terrified. In fact, that actor said that he withdrew. So I actually think now, yes, there are more laws, more ways they can put us away, and so much of control. At the same time, there seems to be a lot of people who are resisting it. So I am actually quite inspired. So at that time, of course, your play was just amazing because we were all like you said, pent up frustrations, right? So that was that one particular I think when he tells that line. The other thing that was interesting for me as being in charge of front of house is, besides turning people away, we were trying very, very hard to fit everybody in. And I was just telling y'all earlier that sometimes we had to take people up and get them to sit in the lighting room. You know, because there was no more space. So we would go to the sound room and try and squeeze people in.
I didn't know that.
These were diplomats who wanted to see the play too. So even the diplomats want, and you know, so anyway, so it was a very, very exciting time. Of course, made very jolly by hanging out with Mariam
And drinking
our
gin.
gin.
Bernard?
I just come back from Australia, having studied for an English degree, majoring in theatre. And it was, I think, several months after I'd returned. The first play that I'd seen was Long Day's Journey into Nights, which had both you, Thuan Chye, and Mano in it.
Yeah.
And
He was my father.
yes, and that was the first Malaysian play that I saw, followed by Emily of Emerald Hill by Puay Tin. I must say that Puay Tin's performance and that production made me more excited than Long Day's Journey. However, I was very glad to have connected with a theatre community. And when I remember when I was watching 1984 Here and Now, it filled me with a lot of excitement because of the political nature of the production. It made me feel like as though, yes, theatre could say something and activate for a particular, you know, mindset and involvement of the community. So I was very excited by that, I must say. Yeah.
I'm going to actually put someone in the spot, Kokman. Can I actually, because Kokman has just directed, he's directed the only other actual production of 1984 Here and Now.
that's right.
For New Era College, am I right? In 2017?
Yeah.
15?
Actually, I felt interesting to see the past, what they have done. Like when I watched 1984, the play. But before that, I watched the novel from George Orwell. And before that, actually, I did Animal Farm as well. So that's why I'm quite interested in George Orwell story. I think it's very important to me when I did 1984 because for the young generation, I always think about what they know about the past, what they know about the history of Malaysia. So that's why I'm more interested in this few years. So I'm not only directed 1984 and Short Fish and even Udan Dandara and translate in Mandarin version. And also like the first audience asking about the question, because in Malaysia we have language boundary or, you know, because like when I do Mandarin, then maybe Malay audience can't understand what I'm talking about. So that's why I felt in Malaysia there's a lot of good play, right in Malay and right in English. But I felt sad maybe for some of the Chinese education audience, not really can reach that and to understand more about what Malaysian theatre have done before. Yeah, so that's why one of the plays I select is 1984 and perform in New Era College, and we like have more generation to understand or to know about what we have done in the past. And also quite interesting is because after more than 30 years, what happened in Malaysia now is we have the same situation. And I also want to say that in the future, 2020, I want to restage again. Because 1984, right in George Orwell, right in 1948. So it's 36 years. So after 36 years, 1984 is 2020. So I felt quite interesting to restage again 1984 in 2020. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
please post
Kokman.
auditions to the performance. So,
But the ending, he changed it. He did different.
Fasyali, you've got a question?
Because
no,
he felt that for
you want to
today's
close that?
audience,
Okay.
it might not
So,
be so workable.
saya kira dalam bahasa Melayu juga, ini maybe my last comment before
Sure,
before
please
we
do.
1984 agak kurang terkenal di dalam teater berbahasa Melayu. Dan saya kira student-student daripada UiTM dan yang menggunakan bahasa Melayu sebagai bahasa perantara di universiti tidak terdedah dengan teater yang bukan bahasa Melayu tetapi masih bercakap tentang Malaysia. So saya rasa ini adalah satu peluang kepada pelajar-pelajar yang berbahasa Melayu untuk mengenal teater lain selain berbahasa Melayu yang bercakap tentang bahasa Melayu. Dan ini sangat penting sebab dia memberi reflect even sudah 30 tahun lebih dan ia masih memberi kesan kepada Malaysia secara menyeluruh. Dan mungkin kita sudah ada version dalam bahasa Chinese version, Mandarin version, which I saw it. I tak faham satu apa, tapi before I came I read the script and then I follow lah the story because from the script. But very interesting and you know, for other Malaysian that don't understand other language, please watch other play and celebrate our diversity. You tak faham tak apa, but you know there's something coming.
It's okay to not like it.
Yeah.
Tengok. It's okay if you don't agree or you don't like it, but as long as at the end of it you can discuss. Kita boleh bincang. Jangan takut untuk boleh berbincang. Tak apa kalau kita tak setuju, kita tak suka pun tak apa. Tapi kita mesti ada sebab. Don't just suka tak suka sebab tak suka muka dia or benda macam tu. But tak suka ada sebabnya, ada logiknya. So it's okay. I mean there's certain things also macam I suppose even during the rehearsals, ada benda yang kita tak setuju. Tapi at the bottom line it is beranikan diri untuk mencuba, and then mungkin dari itu kita boleh discover certain benda yang kita tidak akan discover kalau kita tidak langsung cuba. I think on that note it would be also interesting for 1984 to be also staged in Bahasa Malaysia.
In Bahasa Malaysia,
That would be really interesting. Really.
And I think Charlene's big point is that the work would be relevant to be staged not only in Malaysia because it's about divisions that are artificial, right? So I have to. So we, I thank you so much, but I think we have to close the session. So I'd like to say a really big thank you. Firstly, to our three panelists, Kee Thuan Chye, Fatimah, Bakar, and Maniam. I'd like to thank my co-moderator, Fasyali, who actually really did a lot of research before. We'd like to thank, of course, today's talk was produced by Josiah and with amazing support from Ho Hui Ting and the Five Arts team. Thank you. Thank you to Kino-i who are recording this. Sime Darby, Think City, Half Moon Bay, and JKKN are sponsors of this project. So, commercial break. So this is a copy of a book that was put together by Five Arts Centre. Full disclosure, I was one of the editors. But it has actually a copy of 1984 in it, and it's got archival photographs, there are essays, there are discussions. So please, you can get a copy for sale. Ask Hui Ting, who's waving her hand there. And then I have the most important announcement now. It's a message from the producer. I forgot to tell Kathy to announce refreshments after the event. Please ask her to announce after the event. Thank you. So there's nasi lemak and there are drinks and there are other refreshments over there. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you again to our panelists.